And apparently it's much older than the 1700s, because apparently before it was in English, it was in German. It was in German centuries before it was in English. And on top of that, there is a Gaelic version of it as well. So the death of young Andrew. I am going to recite you the lyrics to the death of young Andrew. And let me warn you, not for the squeamish, not for the childish, but in a way, there's a beauty to it, right? It's a very sad story. And I'm actually going to, at the end, reference to you, who, I think it has some similarities to some current events. You may not see it for a while, but I'm going to end by dedicating it to a certain individual who's been in the headlines lately, and I think you'll know who it's going to be. So if you're not ready for me reciting a long bit of lyrics, some long lyrics from a very long, very dark and very violent and sexual ballad, please go elsewhere. You've had your trigger warning. And on that note, I'm going to entertain you with what was a very well-known and popular song in the 1700s. All right? Be ready? Here goes. A dramatic reading. The Death of Young Andrew, a pop song from the 1780s. As I lay in my bed asleep, a dreadful draught in my mind I drew, for I dreamed of a lady and her young man, and he was known as young Andrew. The moon shone bright, and it cast fair light. Welcome, says she, my honey, my sweet, for I have loved thee 7 long years, and now at last we've chanced to meet. And then he took her in his arms, and kissed her on both cheek and chin, and twice or thrice he pleasured her, before the two must part again. Says she, good sir, you've had your will. You can demand no more of me. Remember what you said before, take me to church and marry me. Fair maid, I can't do as I would, but my sweet love, if you love me, go and fetch your father's gold, and I'll go to the church and marry thee. This lady's gone to her father's hall, as well she knew where his gold lay. She counted out 500 pounds, and back to her love she went away. Then she gave it all to young Andrew, with chains and jewels no gold could buy. Then he took her by the lily-white hand and led her up to a hill so high. She wore a gown of velvet black, a pitiful sight as ye shall see. Take off your velvet gown, for no foot further you'll go with me. She took off her gown of velvet black. Full many a salt of tears she did cry. In a robe of finest silk, she stood before young Andrew's eye. Take off your silken robe, your finery shall go with me. I'll take it for my lady fair, who I love more than I love thee. Then she took off her silken robe, full many a salt a tear she did cry. In a petticoat of scarlet red, she stood before young Andrew's eye. Take off your petticoat, for even that shall go with me. I'll take it for my lady fair, where she does dwell in a far country. She says, remember, young Andrew, that you were once of woman born, and for that child that Mary bore, please let me keep my petticoat on. O fair lady, I know it well, that I was once of woman born, yet for no child that Mary bore will I let you keep your petticoat on. And then he pulled forth a Scottish sword and held it in his right hand and says, will you die on my sword's point or go naked back home again? My father is a right good earl, as any in this country, and if he your body takes, it'll flower on a gallows tree. And I have 7 brothers, she says, all hardy men and bold are they, and if they your body take, you'll never see another day. Though your father is a right good earl, and any in this whole country, he shall never my body take. I'll fly so fast across the sea. Though you have 7 brothers, he says, and hardy men and bold they are, they never shall my body take. Across the hills I'll fly away. This lady's gone to her father's hall, where every one their rest did take. All but the earl, her father dear, who lay awake for his daughter's sake. And she stood there naked at the door. Who's there? Her father called within. It is your daughter Helen, she cries. I pray you rise and let me in. But up and spoke her father dear. No, I'll not rise and let you in. You'll never enter through that door till you bring back my gold again. Oh, father dear, your gold is gone. I cannot bring it back again. Then naked you came into this world, and naked you'll return again. So she stood there quaking on the ground, until her heart it burst in 3, and in the morning she was found, stone cold dead, beneath a tree. And when her father, he got up, this pitiful sight that he might spy, his naked daughter lying dead, the salt tears trickled from his eye. I set so much store by my gold, and now my daughter's lost today. Like flowers fading in the frost, this poor old man would waste away. And they have sworn a solemn oath, and they have sworn by earth and sky, that they will take this young Andrew, that he would wish for the day he died. These 7 brothers then rose up and chased young Andrew into Wales. They caught him there by such a wile, he'll tell no more such lying tales. For there he stood, this young Andrew, like any fox they ringed him round, crying, we've not come for our father, but for the sister you've done down. The 2 of them, they broke his legs, and the 2 of them broke his collarbone, and 2 of them broke his 2 arms, and then leaned him back against a stone. And up and rose the eldest one, saying, see the pity we show thee, for you ne'er shed our sister's blood, so we'll not do that unto thee. And they took up their father's gold, and they laid it out in young Andrew's sight, saying, guard this well, you young Andrew, defend it well from the wolves tonight. And then they left this young Andrew, as naked as the day he's born, saying, men will strip you to the skin, but wolves strip you to the bone. And they left young Andrew there for dead. Full soon a wolf scented his smell, and she came roaring like a bear, and gaping like a fiend of hell. She finished what the men began. When young Andrew at last had died, the hungry wolf devoured him, the earl's gold lying by his side. And that was a popular song back in the 1780s, The Death of Young Andrew. And I would like to dedicate The Death of Young Andrew to Keith Raniere. Think about that. They've had them in every age. In every age, they've had their Keith Ranieres. So, on that note, folks, thank you for sitting through that epic of old English epic violence and pornographic, naked, freezing people to death, vengeance, torture, wolves eating people, violent, epic ballad from the 1780s. Thanks for sitting there. That was certainly a dramatic poem. I will make clear the reason I dedicated The Death of Young Andrew to Keith Raniere is because I think that Keith Raniere is kind of a similar figure to young Andrew, right? He manipulates young women to get their family's money. He then betrays them and mistreats them, and he goes and does this for a little while until society kind of has had enough of him, and he goes to prison for a long time. And I guess in young Andrew's case, you read about how they got their revenge on young Andrew. But I think that this young Andrew character that's in that poem I just read you is very similar to Keith Raniere. I mean, he's the Nexium guy of the 1700s or the 1400s, I guess. That's kind of why I made that point. Because I mean, when I thought of young Andrew, right? I mean, it's a similar kind of thing, right? I mean, the poem begins, as you heard, with him. He's seducing this young woman and telling her that he loves her, and then manipulating her to steal her father's gold, as you heard. He then steals all her clothing and leaves her in the woods naked. She then runs to try and get to warmth, and she freezes to death. The father feels devastated, and then the brothers go and get their revenge. And it's quite a bloody story, right? And this is one thing, it's like there is like a racist edge to some of the criticisms of music that you hear. A lot of very conservative folks have it in their mind that everything that white people do is just wholesome and kind, and there's no violence and there's no killing, and we're civilized, and it's other cultures that are barbaric and primitive and do all this awful stuff. Well, I just read you a very, very, very popular song that was one of the Child's ballads that Francis James Childs compiled in 1789, and it is full of barbaric, ugly, killing, torture, manipulation, sex. I mean, it's some intense stuff. And finally, the wolves eating them at the end. I mean, that's pretty intense. Feeding people to wolves is pretty gruesome, says Harold Sullivan. Exactly. So, I thought of this old English piece that I heard when I heard it performed by the harpist, right, at a folk gathering. I heard it performed by a harpist. I was a small child. I was rather disturbed by the content. It was a bit much for me to listen to as a young child. And I know why I was disturbed. I think there's plenty of people that are probably disturbed by it now. I mean, it's a particularly dark piece of writing about a very evil, manipulative man, young Andrew, that is getting his comeuppance. I mean, I think people probably like that it has rough justice in it, right? People think about, a lot of people talk about, right, the Odyssey, right, and the way that Odysseus takes care of the suitors who are trying to marry his wife in his absence, right, and it's particularly bloody and gruesome and violent, and that kind of, vigilantism, rough justice, that's something that seems to be a theme in a lot of art from older times. It seems like the hero being wronged and then going and extracting revenge from those who have wronged him. That seems to be a very common theme in like old ballads and old poems, the Iliad, the Odyssey, and such.